Righto, we're back from the Summernats. How good's that show? I mean, every year I just love to go back there and celebrate what it's all about. Now we're back home, we're looking at what we've got to do and what we've got in front of us. I've spoken to the owner of the car. We're throwing the deadline idea out with the garbage because I just can't manage all the things that we can't control. So we'll get this car finished. You guys will be able to stay on board and watch us do that. But what we're going to do is go every second week with the build, and then I'm going to start bringing to you my past, what I've done with the cars and everything else in my life as a series that will run alongside the build. So I hope you enjoy that, and let's get back to building cars. So one of the issues about the front guard and getting rid of that aluminium extension has been an absolute nightmare. So this is the normal insert that goes in there, but because we've changed it and we've tried to make everything fit the front so it gets as close as we can to being, you know, perfect, hate that word, but perfect. So we've now had to graft to make some brackets. So this piece is normally a spot welded piece from the factory. So Darren's just been making this little bit here up so that we can now attach it to our extension piece because it didn't quite all line up. So we're going to make that so that it fits back in and we can spot weld it back in again, and that lets us paint in behind it, and it just hopefully puts to rest this whole extension, because as I said to the owner the other day, I'm never going to do another one because it looked like an easy process, but it's turned out to be a monster. So the last piece is this inner, and I've talked about this before, but you really should pull these out because they get all rusty in the back. So we've got this all pretty much ready. So I'll now put epoxy in this area so that this little fella can go back in. And we've had this all cleccoed in for our fitment. So now we're going to spot weld that back in, or plug weld it back in. And then I can finally get to do the last fit up and finalise this and start getting some paint on the thing. So we're back from the Summernats. Got a day yesterday just sorting stuff out, working where we're going. Darren's back today from a break over the week as well, so he's had Christmas off, didn't get a chance to go down to the Summernats, but I've been filling him in on that this morning. So we're on the bumper. Now, I keep preaching about if you modify something, it keeps snowballing down the track. So Darren's been out here this morning trying to play with this. So when we've had the bumper on the car, we've had an old set of brackets that we cut up to get it to fit where we wanted it to fit on the car. Now we're trying to modify a good set of brackets to be able to look right and bolt it all together. So one of the issues has been we've had to slot these this much to be able to move the bumper in far enough. Then this piece was cut out because there used to be a diagonal pipe from the previous shop that we've cut out and thrown away. So we can now leave this part here complete. So we can leave that as a full piece, but we've now got to slot these in here and here. So we've got to take this one off and work ourselves around to get that all in there and still bolt together and do the job. So it's just one of those things where every time you modify something, it snowballs one thing to the other, and you end up losing half a day just trying to get the bumper on the car where you've had it with a bracket, but not good enough to use. So that's the job we're up to today. This just got 3 big spots in there, so from the factory, so we should be able to drill those out and knock it off there, hopefully. A little bit thicker than body steel, mate. Righto, so got a little surprise in the mail today. I couldn't work out what was coming because the post office said I got a parcel coming, didn't know what it was. A while back, I don't know, I was on somewhere on the net and I ordered a battery clamp, a billet one from somewhere, Amazon, something like that. And it was a bit of a punt because it was cheap. It turned up today and I'm pretty excited because it actually fits. So I've set it on there and it's got the right width, and the benefit is, it's pretty good. I just got to grind the Chinese writing off it, but that's life. Really cost effective, checked all the measurements, it worked. So because we're running a Century battery, and it's a square battery, then I needed to get a square mount for it. And the top that come with that was another Amazon thing I didn't like, so I went with the billet. So we've now got everything we need. It's pretty much a standard configuration, which I'm happy about. And of course, we've got the square battery from Century with the dual force. Now, I thought I'd just have a little chat to you about that, and I had to drag some stuff off the net because I couldn't remember it all. Previous, I've used Optimas, and we all talk about gel batteries, and it's funny that they're not actually a gel battery, even the Optima. So this battery is what they call an AGM or a VRLA battery, which is a valve regulated lead acid battery. So they're actually an acid battery, but they're sealed and they're non-spillable. And in the Century paperwork, it actually says other names are electric storage, AGM, which is absorbed glass mat, lead acid battery non-spillable, or a gel battery. And I've always just called Optima's gel batteries. So I went on to the, went through the rest of the site. So Century actually have Optima on their side as well. And they are the same thing. They're an AGM dual purpose starting and semi-cycling spill-proof container, blah, blah, blah. So they're the same battery. I like this for a couple of reasons. One is it's that shape rather than having the round circles. And secondly, this battery is probably one of the biggest storages I've seen in a normal commercially available battery. So it's 950 cranking amps and it's 100 amp hour. And to give you an idea, the comparison one in the Optima, their D31, which is their big one, is 900 cranking amps and 75 amp hour. So this is going to give me more storage, more cranking amps. I like the configuration, and obviously I now like the company. So all in all, it's a win-win. So we're trying to chip our way at this bonnet so I can get it back together. So Darren's just been messing around today. We've actually put all of this extra panel work in here because normally that's open. And you can see a few weld marks and stuff there. So we then had double panel here, and from the factory it's single panel, and from the factory these little threaded ends have just got like a screw-on nut, and it hasn't got a thread, it's a self-cutting. And they always play up. And what we've been able to do is, you can see this one here's got a nut on it. And the reason it has a nut is we grabbed a 3mm die out of our set, little cheap set that was that size, and we've ground it down small enough so that we can fit it all the way around where it's got to go. And we've now cut a thread onto that aluminium in 3mm, and we can use a 3mm nut. So that'll let us hold that on and be able to put a nice looking nut on it as well. So just trying to get all these little things done so that we can work our way towards putting some paint on this thing. So I've lumbered Darren with another one of these jobs. I promised I'd do it for him, but it hasn't happened because I'm too busy making films and all for you guys. So what's happening here is really a show car thing. This is not something I recommend for street cars or for cars that aren't trying to really get maximum points. What we're doing is welding the skin fully so that we can bog up this back edge. So this edge here, we're welding all the way around. So we've pushed that over, we've painted all the inside. I know people are going to say what we're doing now is going to damage that paint, but the reality is if I can paint it all, we found by using the POR 15 that when we do that, it sort of goes molten and then goes back, and it'll be a pretty good seal, but I accept the fact that it's probably not going to be the perfect scenario, but I don't want this cracking after I've filled it. So what we do is clean it up and then go along and weld it with a MIG. So Darren's going to start doing a bit of that, and I'll grab a bit of that footage. So the process here is to Just do a few small tacks, cool it, and then move, 4 inches along, do 3 more, work, cool it again. It's a very slow process, but that's the only way you're going to limit the amount of distortion you're going to get on the other side. Now you need to, when you're doing that as well, is to make sure that you don't have too much heat in your MIG. You want enough so that you get enough penetration that it grabs hold, but it's always going to sit up a little bit with what we're doing because we don't want too much heat that's going to then impact on the way the skin on the other side responds, and we end up having to have to fix the distortion. So that's the process, and I'll come back when he's got a bit more done. So that's the finished job, running along there with the welder. So this process is never going to be pretty. I mean, we're not looking to make it look nice. We're just looking that we can weld it up and bond it together. So when we grind it back now, or sand it back, it actually leaves us with something that's not going to crack when we put the filler over it. Now, something to remember when you're doing this sanding is this can make as much heat as the welding. So as you're doing it, work your way along and then back so that it gets a chance to cool down a bit, because you can really make almost as much heat with the sanding process. So we use 80 grit flapper. And this one's, and the newer the better. And that'll rip it off nice and quick and try and keep the heat down. We're just trying to do some loose ends on this car. This guard's pretty much ready to have the inner put back in it, but there was some rust in here that we'd cleaned up, but I wasn't really happy. And when we did this earlier, I hadn't used this product before. And this is a gel, so it's a rust remover rather than a converter. And it just eats into the rust. So that'll sit on there for a few hours. And you can see where it's turning black here. That's where it's actually eating all that off. And that'll go all the way back to bare metal. Nice clean metal rather than having that black look that you get when you do converting the rust rather than removing it. So that was left overnight, and that's getting pretty close now. So just trying to get all that black out of there because that's oxidized. So it's rust that's been converted, with the acids that changes the structure, but it's still converted rust. So I'd like to see it back to bare metal. So that's where we're heading. And I reckon another dose today, probably by after lunch, it'll be good to go. Righto, so I'm just going to put the dolly in behind there and then come in from the back and try and get myself so it's 90 degrees and looking a little bit better than it does now. Now just letting the dolly bounce a little bit so that the metal can go somewhere. So, I don't know if you can see that, whether Steve can come over and get a bit better look on that, but let's move that. And now, this here wants to move, but I don't want to wreck that groove. So you should be able to hear the difference in the dolly when I'm holding it tight and when I'm letting it bounce. So I'm going to finesse that a bit more, but Steve, if you run along there, you'll see that edge now is looking a whole lot better. And I don't believe I've made any impact on those ridges. So this little kick here, like I say, I'm trying not to bend this bottom, so I'm just going to put that flat trowel in there that I've squared up previously. That'll keep that edge nice and straight. Pretty much one hit, that's come out. So you just got to be thinking about what you want to stay in position on what you want to move, and then a way to hold it. Okay, so we've moved down to the shrinker stretcher now. So you can see here I've got this dent from the factory that's got like a step in it, and we don't want the step anymore. So I'm going to put it in the shrinker here and pull that metal together, and what I'm looking to do is to do the whole width. If I put it in the very outside edge out here and shrink it, it will actually try and curve the panel. But if I go all the way in like that, if you just come around a little bit, Darren, the other way, just to square us up, and then I'll put a little bit of pressure on that. These dies pull the metal together. Just do a little quick one, and that's taken most of that out. I'll just do another one. And if you move along a little bit, it means that you don't have the same marks, they're not as deep. So that face now has got that nice curve rather than having a bend in it. So we're going to put that back in, but just before we do, I need to get rid of a bit of metal there. So just go down a bit, right next to that where the rubber goes. So I'm just going to, very little pressure needed. And then there was another one somewhere, Darren, down here I think. Right on that rubber again. So if you put your foot on it, Darren, but not too much. You've broken one, just a little bit. Oh, doesn't need much. Righto, so we've got a pretty good looking edge now, so we're going to bolt that back on and just see what we've got. So while I was down at the Summernats, I just got asked so many times with what's happening with Darren, because those that are friends with him on Facebook or whatever, seen that you sold your house. So they're sort of saying, is he leaving you? And I'm sort of going, no, because if he leaves, I'm finished. Because anyone that's been watching me on Facebook before we started the YouTube is that Darren and I have been working together, what do we work out, nearly 10 years now. Yeah. And that all started back with Cormint, because I needed a reference car. Darren had probably the best two-door Falcon in the country that was unrestored at that time. And we got together, and Darren lives really close by as well, and started doing bits and pieces, and now is a mainstay in what we do. So fortunately for me, he's going to commute from down the coast. So how far down are you, and what's happening?
It's about 4 hours away, just past Bega. And yeah, we're just finalising the house now this week. And
your old place?
Old place.
Yep. And
then, yeah, be down there for good.
For good. So got a couple of acres, got a tractor now. I saw on Facebook the other day, cruising around with the slasher, doing a bit, so keep you busy. So when he got here this morning, because he had a couple of weeks off over Christmas, I said, so you're all refreshed or you're worn out from doing the block? But obviously a big change of life for you and Beck.
It will be, probably more so for Rebecca.
Yeah.
I don't think she's much of a country girl, but she's going to have to get used to it.
Yeah. So Rebecca's like doing horticulture and growing cactuses and plants and stuff that she's going to sell down there as well?
Yes,
yeah,
that's right.
So bit of a tree change, I guess. Not a seed change, a tree change?
Yeah, that's right. I'll still do a plants and probably get back into a yoga and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, cool. So Darren's going to be around for a while, and fortunately for me that's the case, because he does all of that heavy fab stuff for me to get me to the point where I do the panel work and the shrinking and the playing. And then he's like me, he's a good all-rounder, does a bit of everything, and once we get into assembly, the same thing, he's part of that, the polishing, the whole process. So a couple of months to go, mate, but we'll get there.
Hopefully, we will.
No, we will. We will. So as a bit of a bonus, Darren's car ended up back here because, as you've seen, he's moving away, so nowhere to put the car, but he's got a few little things we're going to do to it, a few mods he's making. Check it out on Sunday on Astill Design Extra, and we're going to bring to you a story about a car that's been built for 7 years. So one of the issues with the guard is that we wanted to make this front, one for the bloopers.